Hello, workmates. Welcome to Work and Talk in PH, your go to podcast for lifestyle insights, career convos, and real estate realness, where chill convos meet real life lessons because hashtag it works.
Our guest today has worn many hats in the public sector, from serving as city councilor in Bacolod to taking on a national role as Undersecretary of the Department of Communication and Information Technology. Her journey gives us a front row seats on how government works and how it can work better. She's a lawyer and an advocate for digital governance and inclusive development. Let's all welcome Attorney Giselle Sia. First question, you've had such a unique career from local government in Bacolod to the national scene with DICT. Can you walk us through that journey, ma'am?
Well, first of all, I'm really glad to share my story today. It's a very long journey, so therefore it's a long story. But it started probably when I was 6 years old. When
Six
I
years
started
old. You already
to,
had your dreams, ma'am. 6 years old.
of course, because I was trying even at that age to get to elementary because the school won't accept me. As a kid, my handicap was my parents did not allow me to attend kindergarten. And even at that age, I was struggling to push myself in. So at 6 year old, I realized I wanted to help the country. I wanted to help my community and my city. Anyway, fast forward to 2022, uh, August 4, which is today.
Yes.
This is supposed to be my third year anniversary. Had I
Yes,
not
as
opted to
USEC
leave
in DICT, ma'am.
Yes, had I not opted to leave. But what brought me to, the idea that when we are given a lot of talents and skills, we need to give back to our giver. It's important that based on the parable of the talents, you cannot hide these talents. You need to share it. So very early in my life, I started becoming a student government president in high school and then in college and then even in law school, I was so very active, leading a lot of things, leading a lot of program. I take a lot of satisfaction seeing the fusion of my ideas, many ideas, mostly pioneering, because I always ask the question, what if? Maybe this can be done, maybe it cannot be, so worth a try. So I took up law because I wanted to be a woman who is given equal opportunity with men to be heard. I joined politics. For 9 years, I sat as councilor of Bacolod. And that was also a period of my life where I served my community. But more than just serving the community, I have to say that I learned a lot. In your service, you also get to learn a lot of things. You also get to talk to a lot of people and learn from them. Then eventually, because my sandbox is really around information technology, so I was out of the blue, maybe it's heaven sent as well, invited to be Undersecretary of the Department of Information and Communications Technology in 2022. And so that's it. The whole
Has the ICT advocacy always been your advocacy from the start, Attorney Giselle?
No, that's a good question. Life and of course the heavens would usually push us to where it wants us to serve. And in 2004, when I ran for the office of city councilor in Bacolod, I was minority. I was in fact an independent candidate, a minority of one person, therefore. And so I had to wait for my committee to be assigned to me. And lo and behold, I was not given any committee except the Committee on Women. Thank God there's only a few men in the council. And at that time, there were only two of us women. The other one left to me is the Committee on Communications.
It's meant
Communication,
to be, Attorney Giselle.
it's meant to be. It's a destiny. That was in 2004, so about 20 years ago. When I got the committee, I had to read the internal rules, and it says I had to take care of telegrams, the old thing about communications. And then
Yes, ma'am.
one day I just found out I was in a seminar talking about information and communications technology. From then on, I began to embrace the industry, the sector, not for the glamour of it, but really believing that ICT can create jobs, opportunities, and investments, especially for the countryside.
What year, ma'am, did you were able to convince the Bacolod LGU to open the government facility for BPOs, ma'am? Because that was the start of the entry of BPOs in Bacolod.
Well, it was right exactly during that year, 2004.
2004.
Yes, that I drafted the Bacolod ICT Focus Team executive order, which the mayor at the time signed and appointed me as the head of that. And it took us around a year to really create our strategies. We began to work with different agencies. At the time, it was only DTI and DOST, no DICT yet. And I also had chance to visit countryside location, well, particularly Cebu, because
Mhm.
at the time it was only really just Cebu outside of Metro Manila, which is our North Star. And then eventually we started to make a lot of noise. We were given opportunity to join the e-services in 2005, 2006. We really worked very hard for this. It was not an easy journey. And that's why I'm trying to inspire a lot of cities now. You know, if you don't start, it will even take longer for you to
Yeah.
get investments. And things have actually evolved. The scorecard that we were looking at 20 years ago is no longer the same scorecard that the industry now requires. So yon, it's really an evolution of understanding where we can promote Bacolod, who we can connect with, and creating the right strategies.
In 2004, ma'am, when did you get, from the time you launched the facility, when did Bacolod secure its first BPO, ma'am?
That's a good question. It took us around maybe 24 months.
2 years then, ma'am.
Yes. Kasi the pitches happened in 2005. So I remember in 2005, every week I would face a lot of interested investors. And we need to change our deck. Every time I present, the following time I would have to change my deck because I would realize that kulang siya, it needs to be updated. So the whole 2005 was all about promotions, pitching, and I have to say that my batting average, if I look back, is really just around 25% because not all
You're
of
talking to so many BPOs, ma'am, and only
yeah, talk
25% would give you a reply or even opportunity to present the project, ma'am.
no, it's like I'm talking to say 100 BPOs for the
Yes.
last 20 years and only attracted 25 of them, but 25 of them will be around 40 to 50,000 in total in terms of jobs. So, ang sinasabi ko nga for the cities who get to be impatient about pitching, that's not the right attitude because you need to pitch and pitch, you need to promote. Whether or not the BPO really decides to locate in your city or not, it doesn't really matter. The point is you were given a chance to promote your city.
Yes.
So going back to your question, they started to already occupy Bacolod or locate in Bacolod in 2006. Sa dinami-dami ng mga BPOs that we've talked to, came to visit, in fairness to them, 2005 sort of also like the year that they went out of Manila and spend resources just to visit the cities, no?
Yes.
To a lot of consulting companies, we were also in the radar for all this due diligence. And the start of the coming of this BPOs really was in 2006. Bali, sunod na sila 2006, 2007,
So,
2008.
so you really believe build it and they will come?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say to our government and even our industry and academe. That's how I started it. I had to talk to all these three sectors, and I had to really emphasize the fact that if we're only thinking of our own sector and even of our own company, nothing will come out of it. But if we think of Bacolod, like say, set aside whatever we're trying to sell or promote, but really just think about our city, how do we attract jobs to our city, then maybe it will yield a lot of results. And indeed, it did
Yes.
have results.
Fast forward to your time as Undersecretary of DICT, how did that shift happen? Was there a big adjustment moving from City Hall to a national agency, ma'am?
Being a countryside mouse, a provinciana, spending all my life here in the province, going to the big city, the biggest city, in fact, Metro Manila, is really definitely a big change for me. The work style is also different. And I have to say that local government and national government, because of our objectives, also we work very differently. And I'm used to working with local government where we are being watched like as if we are inside an aquarium. And every day we have to be accountable for everything we do, everything we say. In the national level, because it's very distant from our constituents. So parang I see less accountability. I see less urgency in trying to really create results. Alam mo yon, mostly in the policy side. So in fairness to the national government, our work here when I was in the DICT is mostly in setting policy. Pero in my case kasi, I always want to understand how my actions affect person or a Filipino's life.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
parang in my case, parang mahirap yon kasi malayo ang national government eh. So I don't even know if these things will impact on the lives of every Filipino. And I realize very candidly that in the national level, we tend to have a lot of strategies that we really don't even know if it's for the good of every Filipino.
What were your top priorities when you were in DICT, ma'am?
Well, I was given the portfolio of handling information and communications technology or ICT industry development. So my goal was really to bridge government and private sector and all the other stakeholders in building an ICT industry. So the thing is, and this is not an excuse, but over and above that, I was also given a lot of other portfolios. And thanks to former Secretary Ivan Uy, I was also exposed to international cooperation. I was handling ITU representation of the Philippines, ITU, which is International Telecommunication Union, the UN agency for ICTs. I was also handling policy, and policy in itself inside the DICT is a huge sandbox. It's not only policy crafting, it's actually research, surveys, and data collection and all that. A lot of priorities, but I have to say that if you ask me what are the things that probably I put my soul into when I was in the DICT, one is really trying to create strategies how we can improve the chances of all the regions in the Philippines to attract jobs and investments. You can say I was trying to give back. I'm trying to do what I was doing for Bacolod, this time on national scale. So I conducted the regional ICT summits and exhibitions, and I have to really, I am really grateful that I finished all regions of the Philippines. We've connected to more than 3,000 thought leaders from academic, government, and industry in the local level. And in fact, not really fully unboxed all the data that I have gathered from the ground. So sadly, I left the DICT, but I can always share all this data. And I also started the Digital Innovation for Women Advance on a very macro level. I think some people will say this is a little bit petty, but if you look at Europe and other progressive countries, they're really looking at empowering women to be part of the ICT economy as a strategy, as an intervention that's very important. No? Dito sa atin sa Pilipinas, we may think that it's a gender issue. It's more than just a gender issue.
Yeah.
It's an economic issue because we need more people, we need more talent, and women, if they come into the ICT space, if they come into the digital space, I think we'll have more economic impact. And other than that, I think I also focus on a lot of emerging technologies discussion. I champion the creation of the AI governance policy, which sadly until now is not in place. My goal would have been to see the Philippines as having one of the first AI governance around the country. Today, we only have around 30 countries having an AI governance policy in place. AI is already very much creeping into our economy. It's already widely used, but we need to have some sort of a legal framework to ensure that we balance the risk and the innovation side of these emerging technologies. So on top of that, I'm also a big champion for other technologies like blockchain, IoT, and recently, as you may know, I also attended a quantum technology conference, which
Mhm.
is a first in the Philippines. Because I am a big believer of technology, but
Yes.
I believe that technology is only useful when it is really creating impact on the lives of people.
And then Attorney Giselle, for our audience, they want to know the difference between LGU, working in an LGU and national government. What do you see is the biggest difference between working in local government versus a national agency?
Well, legally speaking, both are actually public offices. So we are governed by the same good governance principles, transparency, accountability, rule of law. But I think the difference would be, for me, scope
Mhm.
in the local government is much more limited to the LGU, but in the
Mhm.
national government, you see a lot of players and you get to work with a lot of agencies and with
So
a lot
bigger scope working in the
of
national
stakeholders.
government.
And I think, as I mentioned earlier, maybe this is just my opinion. Some would actually refute this, but I think in the local government, mas malapit kasi kami sa tao.
Yeah.
So we are more accountable and they see what we're doing. In the Philippines, there's big gap between citizens and the national government. And in fact, many years ago, I read a survey which basically asked the question, easy or how difficult are you able to talk to your national government
Mhm.
officials and suggest to them? And I think we have the widest gap in the Philippines. If this is the national government, an ordinary citizen would be very far below. But in other countries, maybe it's because of their citizens' engagement strategy. Ordinary citizens can just suggest, can just, submit their ideas. Culturally, kasi we also have the tendency to put our national government officials in the pedestal. And I find it quite awkward, especially when you have citizens who are more intelligent than a national government official. So, yun, ako naman in my case,
Yeah.
I really am a person who wants to listen to a lot of suggestions. And I think the big difference, I have to say candidly, in the national government is I am able to weld my position, my power to gather as many voices as I can.
Yes.
Now, as a private citizen, it's quite difficult to do that, but I still have a lot allies that provide me insights generously.
And with technology, ma'am, how do you think government should leverage on technology and, as you mentioned, having a closer relationship with the citizens and really maximizing their ideas and to have better policies, better projects that is also going to be beneficial for the continued growth of our country?
Yeah, that's the thing. We have a lot of national government officials. Their knowledge and interest about digital technologies, but ironically, they're not even using these technologies to be accountable, to be transparent,
Yes.
be easily engaging to their citizens. I mean, that has always also been my pet peeve when I was in the national government. You talk about efficiency, you talk about resilience, you talk about transparency,
Yes.
and here comes a lot of digital solutions that are very easily accessible.
Yes.
All you need to do is just to have a team and a good
Yes. Yes.
design concept. And they would always say, no, we don't have the money, we don't have the resources, this and that. We
Yes.
don't know how to do it. For me, it's hypocrisy to be discipling about technology when you cannot even use it for your
Correct.
own purpose. So, yeah.
How do you think the public should voice this out to our leaders and national government to be able to encourage them to really make use of technology, all these
Yeah.
platforms, social media, to be more vocal in giving suggestions on how we can use technology to better improve efficiencies in the system because
Yeah.
they're out
Well,
there,
I
they're available.
I have more than a dozen use cases in my head. because I saw it already. So, for example, disaster and risk management.
Yes.
For example, monitoring and surveillance of goods, especially say if you're handling goods and you need manpower to watch it.
Yes.
It's a lot of solutions, and it's the basic is IoT or Internet of Things. You want to make a plan that will really be very relevant in your community and in your sector, and wants to look back and study the trends in the past. Then
Yeah.
you have data analytics, then you have data science. You want to create a brand for your city or for your, say, the whole country, the Philippines. Have we ever even paused and asked ourselves, how are other countries looking at us? Do we really have a very positive branding, not only for tourism? They always say branding is only for tourism. No, we also have to brand the country in terms of investments,
Yes.
terms of quality of life. So we can do that with a lot of digital platforms, with a lot of digital solutions. But when we keep on going out there and saying the Philippines is the fake news capital of the world and this and that, I don't know. I don't think it's helping.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that can be used. Blockchain, for example, is about ensuring that there's no tampering of
Yes.
government documents, that we are being closely audited. All the documents of government are audited, no fakes and everything. And so blockchain can be used. A lot of things can be used. A lot of technologies can be used, but there's always an excuse. And that's the problem with the excuse, because we always have an excuse not to innovate. And that's the danger for the country.
And then for you, Attorney Giselle, ever since you were young, were you always convinced that you will live in the Philippines, work here, and share your talents here in this country, Attorney Giselle? Or were you also lured by opportunities outside the country?
I have always wanted to travel. I have a lot of countries that are still in my bucket list that I need to go to, but it never occurred to me to make them or these countries my home. I only have one home, and that is the Philippines. And I will
How do
never
you
have.
stay motivated to continue this advocacy when sometimes it's so hard to love this country, Attorney Giselle? Where do you get that energy and that stamina to continuously championing, investing in the Philippines, living in the Philippines, Attorney Giselle?
Maybe I have to say that's a good question. It made me think as of now. I don't think I have the direct answer, but immediately what came to my mind is maybe it has something to do with my being a woman. Why? Because us women, we often have a big, lens of how we see the world, but we never stop looking at the details. Having said that, I see the world, but when I sit down, say for example, even just for 20 minutes, talking to a young Filipino who would approach me in an event and say, you're my inspiration. You don't know me. I just read your post on Facebook.
Yes,
And,
yes.
because of your post, I decided to, do this, do that, help my community. So every time I hear those validations, every time I hear companies telling me, we grew because of your guidance,
Yes.
these are what I call the pixie dust of my life, that I continue to become Tinkerbell because of this little pixie dust. And I think it's not really random. I think it's just heaven, the Lord telling me just, go on. So here's a sunlight for the whole day when you see everything is dark. So that's what keeps me going on. The little things that I see around me.
And all the people that you meet that are grateful for how you've helped them also keeps you going, Attorney Giselle.
Yeah, yeah. I think I have to say I'm always a sucker for results. I cannot sleep with, having an idea in mind and not immediately trying to reach out to someone and
Yes.
let's do this, let's do that. The downside is probably I would not be able to finish all my ideas in this lifetime. But
Yes.
That's what I am. I always want to see whether this idea will work or not.
Tell us, Attorney Giselle, when did you decide to create your own AI? And maybe you can also share your, daily feeding of information to your AI, Attorney Giselle. It's very interesting.
Because my goal is really to ensure that I learn different skills in this lifetime. Maybe because it's also the fact that psychologically my right brain works better than my left brain because I'm an artist. I have a very strong artistic flair. So every day I always think about, what can I learn? What can I learn? As you examine and you play with a lot of functionalities, different platforms, you will realize there's a lot of things that can be done. Now, kahit noon, even just a PowerPoint, I would always ask, okay, aside from slides, can also make a video here, can also make a magazine here. That's the constant feeling that if you're given something, maybe you can ask, what can you do with this platform? So
Yes.
all of the solutions I have, I always consider it as a platform. Probably the only thing that I have not really seriously studied is Photoshop. I don't know, for one thing or another, maybe it's built for left brainers, but the platforms that are really built for right brainers, I usually closely study it when I have the time. And
Yeah,
so,
WordPress.
yeah,
You're an expert in WordPress.
not necessarily, but for 8 years, I have become one. And for example, for AI chat GPT, no? So I was so fascinated and I tried to click everything there. And then I realized it offers us the ability to work and train our own chat GPT. So I started from there. 1 year ago, when I became an enthusiast for ChatGPT, I started to also create my own ChatGPT. Actually, now I already have two. I just
And you have
started.
two AIs, Attorney Giselle?
Yes, I have started to train Nati.
Nati.
So
What's the
Nati.
difference of the two AIs, Attorney Giselle?
So Nati already exists in Facebook. I started it during the COVID. I realized and I saw that there are many people asking a lot of legal questions about the COVID and the situation of the COVID. And so I started a Facebook page, which is called Nati. It's really attorney with a Nati, with a N, because
Mm.
the first women lawyer of the Philippines is Natividad. The family name skipped me, but she was the first female
Female
lawyer
lawyer.
in the Philippines, and her name is Natividad, and her nickname is Nati. So I
Nati.
started Nati. Now, with going back to the private sector and once again being active as a lawyer, I also now started to train a chat GPT named Nati. And the inclination of Nati is really to talk about laws affecting women and children
Mm.
and abused women and rights of children. So this is what I'm trying to train. So hopefully,
Will
I'm
help promote your
thinking,
AI, Attorney Giselle, so people can talk to your AI for questions they may have.
yeah, Nati is still very young. She needs to learn more. So probably within the year, yes.
So, Attorney Giselle, for a lot of young Filipinos today are tuning in, maybe at tech law or considering careers in government. What advice would you give them when it comes to building a purpose-driven career like you have that truly serves the Philippines?
Well, I have to say that I'm a very worthy person. Worthy spelled with WORDY. That's why I wanna ask them first to visit my website. That's JuselBatapasige.com. You just put my name together, small letters, and then add .com to see a lot of nuggets of wisdom in different portions of my life that may apply to you. That said, I would like to still use this opportunity, Chris, to really emphasize that 2025 is a very critical year for the Philippines. This is the year that we enter our sweet spot, our demographic dividend, meaning to say this year we will have more Filipinos of working age than those or who are dependents, say, for example, very old and aging population and young children. This year, we will have less of those and more of the working age And secondly, if you look at ASEAN, all of our neighbors, especially even our very close competitors, entering their 30s in terms of median age. I was talking to people from Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. Their average age currently is from 31 to 34.
Oh,
In the
wow.
Philippines, yes. In the Philippines, we're 25 to 26.
That was the best year for our
Yes, the
working
best year.
population.
Now is the best year. I hope our public officials are listening. Now is the best year to and upskill our youth and provide decent jobs because this has to go hand in hand. Hindi sila magkahiwalay, no? What we did in
Yes.
Bacolod is to promote because as a lot of foreigners talking to me are saying, you need to let the world know what you're doing. So that's what our secret was in 2004 in Bacolod. We were
Yeah.
just doing a lot of things. We're not even sure if it's gonna work and if we are prepared, but we keep on telling the whole country we're doing this, we're doing that. So that's what we need to tell our young people. Now is the best time to upskill. You are going to upskill yourself, not for yourself, but for the country. Imagine in the next 15 to 17 years when we have this population of young people really working and contributing to the economy, probably the dream of lifting ourselves from a lower middle income economy to an upper middle income economy will probably come true. However, in the reverse, when we reach the year 2045 to 2050, when our median age also becomes around 40 years old and we're going to age as a country, and we're still not there yet, it's gonna be sad. I mean, not gonna be there already by 2050, but what I'm trying to say is sana the starting point is this year.
And for the upscaling, Attorney Giselle, is it every year? I mean, like people that are comfortable in their career, what is the duration of upskilling? Every year, every other year, ma'am, every 3 years, in your opinion?
We cannot get tired of upskilling unless we don't really need to work or, it depends on your trajectory. I have to say that this country also, not only me saying this, but ITU and other international organizations saying this, we need to have a skill strategy. And our skill strategy would need to align with our economic strategy. We need to ask ourselves, what will be the Philippines 100 or not 100, but 10 years from now? What would
Yes.
we be? Would we go to manufacturing, to nanotechnology, to quantum technology? So there's a lot of arenas and every year it changes.
Yes.
I always read McKinsey. It's a good, resource. And then every year there's a lot of, they call it economic arenas where a lot of growth are seen. No? For example, of course, it's a no-brainer. Everybody talks about health. It's all about health. Health is
Yeah.
not going away. So now we ask ourselves, in the health economy, where would we be?
Yeah.
Would we be just patients? Or would we be manufacturers of health tech gadgets?
Yes.
So when we do that, when we have that vision, then we have to ask ourselves, what are the skills that we need to learn? But
Correct.
over and above that, we also need to assess what are the skills that we already have. Because, in my learning also of the Atlas complexity of economy, there's such a space as product space or a skill space. So maybe now, and so many people already told me in the past, the good thing about the Philippines is you have a baseline of skill, which
Yes.
is language proficiency.
Yes.
If you start from there, what else can you add to language proficiency? What
Correct.
else can you add to empathy? What else can you add to creativity? The problem with us is we also tend to belittle these skills. Kasi parang, ano ba yan? Creativity, empathy, hindi naman skill yan. Oh no, these are the best skills of Filipinos. We just
Creativity and empathy. I agree with you, Attorney Giselle.
exactly. And just we need to find where we can develop these skills and add on more to it. Maybe splice it with technical skills. Nako, ang dami nating industry na pwedeng hawakan. Splice what we have intrinsically, communications, creativity, empathy, with technical skills, we can go a long way. The journey of the Philippines will really be very positive if we are able to identify the skills that we have and the skills that we need to learn to really supply the requirement of a digital future.
Thank you so much, Attorney Yusel, for being with us. And we are your partners in your journey in championing the Philippines and really working with countryside provinces to help them be ICT ready to bring in investors, opportunities, jobs in their provinces. Thank you so much, Attorney Giselle.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you so much, Attorney Giselle, for your decades of public service. We are lucky to learn from you. To everyone listening, if today's conversation sparks something in you, whether it's stepping into public service, finding purpose in your career, keep going, keep learning, keep working for the Philippines. Don't forget to follow Work and Talk in PH for more episodes like this, where we highlight works that matter and the people behind it. Again, I am Mary Chris, and this is Work and Talk in PH, your go-to podcast for lifestyle insights, career convos, and real estate realness. Where you chill convos meet real life lessons because it works.